Right. In effect, for people, Andre Smith, Smitty Bonton, Dre Smith. You guys know me, Philadelphia native, former law professor, Howard University, Widener, Florida International, Penn State. Uh, I'm more or less retired now, so we host these podcasts for our people. Economic Justice Law Review. You guys know I write books. Uh, tax relationship between tax law and economic justice. Um, what other books did I write? Taxes, Death, and Trouble, How Starving the Beast Tax Cuts Created the Black Lives Matter Movement. The book I'm working on now is called AfrolanticanJurisprudence. And basically, this book talk serves a couple purposes. On the one hand, I'm trying to take the information and all the knowledge and the scholarship and the great scholars and authors that I met while in my 15 years in academia and bring them out to the people. And on top of it, to be selfish, this is just a way for me to keep abreast every week about all the new books that are coming out so I can keep my scholarly acumen at a certain level, which of course helps my writing and books and good stuff. So this is honoring for our people. I hope it rings a bell to you. Maybe you're familiar with Lister Velt Middleton's For the People, which was several years ago, even decades ago now. But that's the show that used to be on PBS where I was introduced to Sheikh Anta Diop, Ivan Van Sertima, John Henrik Clark. So so I believe it's my responsibility to bring these scholars and the folks that are blazing the trail, writing great stuff, take them out the ivory tower, bring them to the people. We talk about for our people. So we talking Black books. They're not all by Black authors, right? They are of interest to Black people or Black scholars, right? And so if you like any of the books or are interested in any of the books, my home bookstore, my home base, Hakeem's Bookstore in West Philadelphia. I'm West Philadelphia native. Shout out to the 210 South 52nd Street, West Philadelphia, beautiful West Blackadelphia, right? Yvonne Blake, the brother Chris Arnold, Princess Glenda, all the folks had Hakeem's Bookstore, the second oldest Black bookstore in the entire country since 1959, founded by Dawood Hakeem, right now run by his daughters Yvonne and Glenda, and with the large assistance of Chris Arnold. Shout out to Nefertiti Moore. Shout out to everybody that pitches in. So again, any books that we talk about here that you're very much interested in, please give them a call, 215-474-9495. They're on Facebook, Hakeem's Bookstore on Facebook, Hakeem's Bookstore on Instagram, Hakeem'sBookstore.com. Go check them. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to save all the Black bookstores, all the centers of Black intelligence, Black museums, Black art centers, galleries, etc., right? We can start by choosing one or several and promoting them. So go to GoFundMe.com/Hakeem's Bookstore, hook them up. If you need them to see them for another 60 years, and do this for any Black bookstore. I have no financial interest in the store at all. This is all because we need to support our own. We need to have collective economics in real life, not just theoretical, not just talking about it. All right? Whew, okay, so that was fun. Let's talk about now the books, right? Let's get to the books. And let me say this again, I'm sorry. Usually we do this on Mondays. It's Saturday already, so I'm planning on doing another one in 2 days. But I have to say, the Jacob Blake, George Floyd, all of these situations this week, the situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin, it was very hard for me to prepare and do this and actually concentrate on books. I could go into a long speech about what I feel we need to do as Black people in these type of situations. But to be perfectly honest, as a Black nationalist, as a Pan-Africanist, as someone who's Afrocentric oriented, it would take me so long to explain why my position on these particular matters that I just think it would be distracting from talking about books. But what I will say is that most of you have already heard me say over and over again that regardless of whether it's a Democratic Party, Republican Party, whether it's good times or bad times, it is our job to dismantle white supremacy instead of finding a comfortable place within it. And to do that in a non-violent way means that you accept or concentrate on three things. Better educating ourselves and our children. That's what we're doing right here. Start and patronize black businesses and institutions. That's what we're doing right here. Stop unduly criticizing each other. And again, we're so focused on educating ourselves and supporting institutions, and we ain't got time to criticize each other. Why? Because that when we do it arbitrarily, when we do it wrongfully, we are promoting. It's not a personal flaw, but it is also perpetuating the myth of black inferiority. So accumulating human, social, political, financial capital, and again, that's capacity, that's power, right? We can achieve those things most efficiently if, as a national ethos, we better educate ourselves and our children, start patronize black businesses and institutions, stop and do criticize each other. If we do all those things, anything else we do thereafter will be productive because we have the right mentality and we also have the wherewithal, right? Right now, we're reliant on others, and therefore we find ourselves in this position. So I'm going to stop there. I had to speak on it. Again, we'll keep this running week to week to week, but I want to focus on the books because I know some of you guys, you don't want a distraction, but you need a fuller black experience, except other than just pain, right? And the fruitful way to achieve that, I think, is knowledge. So let's talk about these books, all right? Let's talk about the books. The first book on tap, well, it's not going to get away from the issue. It's actually going to direct us right back to the issue. Grace Will Lead Us Home, the Charleston Church Tragedy and the Hard, Inspiring Journey to Forgiveness by Jennifer Berry Hawes. Okay, that's a lot. I'll give you the description real quick. On June 17th, 2015, 12 members of the historically black Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, we all remember this, welcomed a young white man to their evening Bible study. We know what happened. The two adult survivors of the shooting begin to make sense of their lives again. Rifts from between some of the victims' families and the church. A group of relatives fight to end gun violence, capturing the attention of President Obama, and a city in the Deep South must confront its racist past. This is a story of how, beyond the headlines, a community of people begins to heal. Now, I think this is very interesting. I would be very much interested in the lives of these people that are in Charleston, South Carolina. We're talking about Dylan Roof and that shooter. So this is very poignant or timely with not just only the police shooting of Jacob Blake, but also the vigilante shooting of the two white protesters that came out for Black Lives Matter. Sorry, I'm just getting that on. So, however, I guess this does not make, my wanted list. Only because, as much as I'm interested in this, and I'm not trying to slam this Jennifer Berry Hawes as being a white author, but the focus on forgiveness and the healing part, again, and I'm sure a lot of you are even more strident about it than I am. I have no problem with Botham Jean's brother forgiving Amber Geiger, the police shooter in Dallas. That's his personal choice. I'm not going to criticize him, right? Stop unduly criticizing each other. To me, that's not a criticizable thing because he represents himself and he has to deal with his personal feelings. I don't have to forgive them. I don't have to look to heal and move forward. It is my position that we deal with these things head on and confront them. And we use this pain to fuel our mission, fuel our drive. I don't see any other way. Allowing it to neuter our striving towards equality seems counterproductive to me, right? And I know it does to some of you in even much harsher terms. So, very interesting book. Jennifer Hawes' Grace Will Lead Us Home. The Charleston Church Tragedy. The Charleston Church Tragedy. Inspiring journey, Tragedy and the Hard Inspiring Journey to Forgiveness by Jennifer Berry Harsh, St. Martin's Griffen books. All right. Now this book is a little higher. This next book is a little higher on my list because I don't think black folks in America, I don't think Americans, period. So when I say black folks, I don't mean to suggest that we are abnormally or asymmetrically or disproportionately unaware of this confrontation that we are in with China. When we talk about dismantling white supremacy, this is not just dealing with a black and white context. We need to be as comprehensive as possible, and that the rest of the world has been fighting white supremacy as well, and that today's circumstances is clearly reflecting the dynamic that China is now the world's most powerful nation. USSR or Soviet Union is very powerful. The United States still remains very powerful. They still have the nuclear weapons that can obliterate the planet. But China is clearly, if not in the lead, on their way to it, and it's a locomotive that the West cannot stop, right? And to see how we've gotten there, to see, again, to appreciate how much the wealth of the West depends not just on slavery of blacks and the subjugation of black people and the exploitation of Africa, but the whole rest of the world, including Asia as well. So this is a very interesting book that I would like to read at some point. I'm not sure if it reaches the very, very top of my reading list, but it definitely gets on the bookshelf. It is definitely something I feel I need to read. And if there's somebody out there that has read it or knows the author, or Christine Hong, I'd be very interested to talk about it. A Violent Peace, Race, U.S. Militarism, and Cultures of Democratization in Cold War Asia and the Pacific by Christine Hong. And it's very interesting to talk about the cultures of democratization, because what we're experiencing here in the United States in 2020 is democracy in respect of other world powers that may have significant influence on it because of free speech, because of freedom, or what have you, neoliberalism, whatever you would call it. That because of Citizens United preventing government from restricting speech and politics, it invites and allows the speech, political speech on American politics of other nations. And if those nations are wealthier than we are, then they get more speech, according to Citizens United. Citizens United wasn't just a way, will not just affect the further subordination of black people in America. Done wrong, it can project the decline and subordination of the United States to other foreign powers if they don't get their act together on that one. So Citizens United is really something. All right. So, but again, A Violent Peace, Race, U.S. Militarism, and Cultures of Democratization, Cold War Asia and the Pacific by Christine Hong. Here's a little piece from the book. A Violent Peace offers a radical account of the United States' transformation into a total war state. As the Cold War turned hot in the Pacific, anti-fascist critique disclosed a continuity between U.S. police actions in Asia and a rising police state at home. Writers including James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison, and W.E.B. Du Bois discern in domestic strategies to quell racial protest the same counterintelligence logic structuring America's devastating wars in Asia. So it's very important because, again, if you're, this book is talking about tactics, right? It's talking about tactics to maintain, create, maintain, exacerbate subordination. In the later episode of Economic Justice Law Review, I'll talk about how it maintains racially asymmetric market failures in service of subordination. This doesn't use my terminology. It's not using economics, but it's still along that vein about the techniques, the tactics, the strategies devised towards subordination. And how can you successfully, efficiently combat those inequity workers if you don't read their books, if you don't read their strategy. I'm not saying this is a book of an inequity worker, but she is the one who has, and there's reporting that strategy to us so that we can deal with it. Because hope is not, I'm sorry, I appreciate hope. I understand the necessity, I understand the usefulness of hope, but hope is still not a strategy. All right, and our last book for this week is Clothed in Meaning, Literature, Labor, and Cotton in the 19th Century America by Sylvia Jenkins Cook. And I think this is a very interesting book too. I personally want to explore the connection between race, civilization, and clothing throughout history, not just in America or an antebellum era. As much as it's interesting, again, the Stonewall Rebellion, the Negro Act of 1730 in South Carolina, prohibited slave owners from buying or dressing their slaves in fine clothes, as you see in Django. Of course, he's not a slave, so he gets to wear fine clothes as a way to, I don't know, reflect that law in the movie. I'm not sure if that was intentional. But clothes are very important as far as clothes make the man, and this idea of civilization, of this idea of the distinction between advanced society and those who are primitive. And if we go back to Africa, we can talk about cotton, enslavement, and the adoption of clothing as the means of demarcating class, whereas African rulers could wear cotton clothes, but those beneath them were prevented. That clothing was a marker or an insignia of royalty. Unbeknownst to perhaps those folks, that this technique was also used to promote white supremacy, and the idea that Europeans cannot not be clothed because of the climate. But does that mean that they are always civilized, whereas those who are quote unquote naked are always uncivilized? So having nothing to do with how they are actually treating each other within their societies, the idea of civilization takes on this connotation of insignia, of symbolism and whatnot, and then becomes a license to subordinate those who are uncivilized. It's very fascinating stuff. So this book does not go that deep into it. Let me talk about specifically about this book instead of the book that I want to write. The rise of the empire of cotton and the empire of fashion in the 19th century brought new opportunities for sartorial self-expression of millions of ordinary people who could now afford to dress in style and assert their physical presence. And again, I really want, the next book I write will be called 9th Century Algae. He's the genius, 9th Century MCs and diss tracks, and I want to explore there about how MCs, about poets in East Africa, urban folks, were fashion conscious, that the fashion industry was based in basically Eastern India, and that new styles came out every year and were sold to Africans in exchange for gold from the mines of Sofala, which is off the Zambezi River. So this Eastern and Southeastern African history that we are almost entirely unaware of will show us that our attachment or our appreciation for fashion is longstanding, is millennia old, but at the same time, the dynamics of it also reflect how perhaps certain attachments, and again, certain accoutrements of so-called civilization are traps, right? That they're quicksand. And once you get in them, you start to sink. Because once you start creating these hierarchies, you're playing a game that you may not be able to win in the long run. So I'm sorry, let me finish off the description of the book. Cloth and clothing provide potent tropes not only for physical but also intellectual forms of self-expression. Drawing on sources ranging from fugitive slave narratives, newspapers, manifestos, and mill workers' magazines to fiction, poetry, and autobiographies, Clothed in Meaning examines the significant part played by mill workers and formerly enslaved people, many of whom still work picking cotton in this revolution of literary self-expression. They created a new literature from their palpable daily intimacy with cotton cloth and clothing, as well as from their encounters with grimly innovative modes of work. So again, I'm going to put this second. First book that I really would like to have and be able to read if time permits. I'm not a fast reader, y'all. I know some people that can devour books like that. I'm very interested in the books. I love books. At the same time, when I read a book, I am discussing the book with the author as I'm reading. So it slows me down. I love it. I appreciate it. That is why I love books. At the same time, I do not aspire to be a speed reader. And so I'm not going to be able to digest all the books that I want. And I'm okay with that. But number one on this from this list, the one I would most like to have is A Violent Peace, Race, U.S. Militarism and Cultures and Democratization in Cold War Asia and the Pacific by Christine Hong. The second book that I would love to have out of this digest is Clothed in Meaning, Literature, Labor, and Cotton in 19th-Century America by Sylvia Jenkins Cook. And then lastly, the book that I would follow up on that if I was on vacation and under a palm tree with a cool drink and nothing to do instead of within this pandemic would be Grace Will Lead Us Home, The Charleston Church Tragedy and the Heart-Inspiring Journey to Forgiveness by Jennifer Berry Hawes. All right, so we're going to close that out. I'm going to remind everybody, again, please support all the centers of Black intelligence, Black bookstores, Black museums, schools, academies, galleries, etc. And always, let's better educate ourselves and our children. Let's start and patronize Black businesses and institutions. Stop unduly criticizing each other. That way we can accumulate human, social, political, and financial capital. That is the revolution that will never be televised. See you on Monday. Hotep.